Well, this is take number 2. I was using my phone and it ran out of storage space. But you can see behind me, that's where we're staying. It's my grandparents' old place. My sister Marcia and her husband Colin live there now. This is my grandfather's barn that worked at many a year, and my dad's barn after that. And you've heard me talk about growing up next door to the Owana Missionary. Well, that's Bart and Pat McCumber's house, just on the other side of the property. And really, it was all one place. We traveled back and forth through here. This was a garden back in the day, and then on that side hill, where you can see the tall grass growing, that was always squash. Last week at Camp Raha, we were in Acts 17, and Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill. It said, "You men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious. For as I passed by, I even saw an altar," neighbors going by, back and forth to work. As I passed by, I saw an altar with the inscription, "To the unknown God." It is amazing when you get out into nature. And I've always loved walks in the woods. I've always loved being outside. And growing up here in this place, maybe you can understand why that would be true. Taking you down back on the back driveway over to the house I grew up in. But Paul begins to present to them the God that they did not know. Now, you've all heard me tell the story of how Paul was quoting from a book that was written in about 4 BC, about events that happened in 200 and something BC. And Paul's standing outside in an outside court as he's doing that. There's can't quite see the hill like you used to be able to from right here. There's some trees have grown up, but this is the dirt driveway that we spend a lot of time on our bicycles, walking back and forth, driving back and forth to the barn. My grandparents' house from another direction, my sister's house now. But it's Paul's use of that altar to the unknown God was huge. It was huge. It was great talking to the kids about it, and I won't go into all the details of it. But it was this is the apple orchard. A few houses still left from the little manse park they called it. I think there was one other. Was there one other house? Maybe not. But the Lord revealed himself to the Athenians by answering a prayer that they asked God to forgive them for not knowing him, and asked him. My brother was just here. I don't know if you can see the tire marks. My brother just pulled out just as I started this. He was still here when I recorded the other video that ended after a minute. But this is the side of the house where I grew up. And the unknown God, who is the creator of all things, he's made of all men, made all men of one blood, indicating that there are in fact no races. There's only ethnicities. There's differences because of the Tower of Babel and because of the separation of people groups. But there's only one race. It's the human race. And we worship the one true and living God as revealed in God's Word. Because if it's just us making up stuff, then who are really deifying? Who are really making God? Now, this is the back field. My brother reminded me that we could, because we have to be quarantined. We had to be quarantined to stay on the property. Well, that's up over that hill and down the other side to the power line is our property. And that's the old farm property, 75 acres. Here's a view of our backyard. I just thought you might get a kick out of seeing the old place. Yeah, not a lot of great spiritual depth this morning, but just be encouraged. God is able. We were so pleased to get across the border. We were so pleased to land here. We were pleased yesterday to join you in church. I thought Travis did a great job. Travis and I have had lunch together a handful of times over the last 2 years, and I'm so glad that this worked out for him and his family to get down and be with us in that vital ministry, right? Really in the intellectual heart of our state. Orono is a city unto itself when it's in session, when it's on campus, and we'll see what happens with that. But it's certainly, let's go down, we'll walk this way. This is where my dad's barn used to be. It burned down a number of years ago. But they keep a path bush cut through here. My brother does a good job with that. But it's a engaging intellectually at Orono, as well as engaging like Ryan does with the Lifeline ministry. It's just huge. Can you hear the birds? Two different approaches to evangelism there at Orono. I think both are needed. Both are definitely needed, but in many ways, the reason why Acts 17 was in my mind was because of what a great job Travis did talking about how do you engage a culture that is against you? How do you engage a culture that is anti-God? I thought he did a great job of talking about using questions. Back at my grandparents' house, there's a couple of buildings right there that were original buildings when they moved in here in 1939, about 2 months before my dad was born. One here, we always called the grain house, and this was always the shop. And still semi-functional, but no farm, so it's not as functional as, as it could be. But I just wanted to stop and say good morning to you this morning. And to wish you well on your journey with the Lord today. It's nice to be outside. It's nice to be outside and to stand on very familiar ground, even though it's changed significantly since I was a kid. But it's funny, you stop and remember, this is where the Lord blessed me with the family that I had, with a grandfather and grandmother who, even though they didn't go to church, they certainly loved the Lord. And then my parents being faithful in service to the local church, and a whole church family that loved and supported those of us who were coming up through. And looks like they are still doing the same thing. But thank you, and God bless you in this day, and follow Him close.